We have a very interesting panel coming up, and I would hand over the stage to Dr. Sarin for taking us through this panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Tata Trust, Social Alpha, Sambodhi for this wonderful session and for this wonderful report. It was very insightful. And today with me, I have a very eminent panelist who have a ton of experience, which is very diverse. And we will be adding to what we've already heard so far on the experiences in the clean cooking area. We all know that universal access to cooking cannot be achieved by 2030, and this drudgery is likely to continue if we do not do more than what we are doing today. And there are many roadblocks to adoption, and especially integrating gender complexities becomes one big challenge that we would like to address. And we have with us Sasmita Patnaik from CEEW. We have Manish Kumar Pandey from TERI, Arijit, who's an international development consultant, and we have Parimita Mohanty from UNEP. So I'm going to spend we have 30 minutes for this panel discussion, and to optimize this, I'm going to briefly introduce you each of the speakers and pose one or two questions to each one of them. And then please share your questions on the chat box. We'll have the last few minutes, 7 to 8 minutes for your questions. So Sasmita, if we can start with you, because we want to first deliberate and discuss a little bit on the policy enablers in this space, in the clean cooking, and policies that would incentivize adoption of clean cooking, communication strategies, and disincentivize, like Santosh talked about in the previous panel, doing away with the dirty fuel. Sasmita has 9 years experience in social and policy research, development consulting, sustainability, and her research focuses on intersection of energy access and social inclusion. At the council, she's currently managing projects on access to clean energy cooking and clean cooking and livelihoods, with an integrated focus on gender and social inclusion. So who better than her to share with us what government policies can be integrated in the sensibilities of gender approach and the key role of various actors, and how can clean cooking solutions in its design and implementation include the end users for the solution, which is what Rima Ben has been also talking about, that how can we not patronize and tell the end users about what is right for their solutions. So over to Sasmita for your experience for the next 7 to 8 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Sarin, and hello to all the fellow panelists and the participants for making the time to attend the session. Thank you, Ramanshu, for that very insightful presentation. I was happy to see a lot of the points that I was already thinking about come up as your learnings. So I will not duplicate the effort there, but I'd like to touch on a few things important, which I think are important to understand from a policy perspective. Now, why is gender important? Why do we need to look at women within this discussion on clean cooking energy? It is not just because they are the users of the solution, but also they manage a household's cooking energy needs. And to look at them with that agency, understanding where they are able to leverage their agency to be able to move a household towards a cleaner stack, which we must be mindful benefits the entire household. It's not just of course, it has a disproportionate impact on the primary cook of the household because they are exposed to the smoke from the traditional fuel a lot more, but it has benefits for the entire household. Policies like Ujjwala have given us an opportunity to bring the focus back on this discussion. So while policies start by being gender sensitive, I think eventually the idea is to move towards a more gender transformative policy design, where you are including not just the women of the household, but also other members of the household, whether it's the spouses or the mother-in-laws or other community agents who have an influence on these decisions within the household. So understanding intra-household dynamics from a policy point of view, and designing the behavior change communication campaigns in a way that this kind of nuance is taken into consideration is important. Secondly, when we think about women, it's important to note that we don't consider them as a homogeneous group. Within the category broadly that we call women, there are many different kinds of other social categories that intersect with it. So the challenges for these categories will be very different. And for some, it could be affordability alone. For some, it could be affordability as well as the family's preferences for taste, etc. And therefore, the communication campaigns that are designed need to target these specific aspects when we are thinking about bringing a change. And I think the one thing that we need to kind of identify is where is that agency that a woman has, and build on that. Because this agency could be coming from, say, the mother-in-law of the household, or coming from a community leader, or coming from the spouse, or coming from their own children. And I think your results are in some way kind of talking about that. So definitely looking at these aspects would be important. Building the capacity of the implementation agencies within, whether it's the ministries or the last mile distribution and service providers, is equally important, because they engage with the communities on a regular basis. So they are, if they are able to understand the gender lens, if they are able to understand the household dynamics, that you can create a very healthy feedback mechanism through which you are able to reassess policy design and policy communication more regularly through a feedback loop. So I think that also becomes an important aspect. Speaking of end users, how do you bring the voices of end users into the conversation? I think it can be done in two ways. One is engaging with women's organizations like SEWA, who have a greater experience of working with women, understanding their lives experiences, and kind of building their efforts around it. The other way in which women's voices can be brought in is through data and research. Because if data is the building block for policy decisions, then unless your data is accounting for the voices of women, is accounting for their experiences, then you are not able to kind of take that input to design policies better, or even design solutions better. And when I say including voices of women, it doesn't only mean that talking to the women in the household. It also means understanding the gender relations within the household, understanding the influence factors. So basically adopting a gender lens in the research, as opposed to just focusing only on women. So I'll pause there in case there is any specific aspect you'd like me to. Thank you.
So, Sasmita, if I can quickly ask you a follow-up question, like Dr. Devajit talked about, at the awareness level, at the adoption level, at the usage level, and from supply side and the end user side, what are one or two examples that you can give us? Because when it comes to purchase decision, like they rebundled, that does not necessarily mean that adoption and consistent usage would be there.
So a couple of examples can be, say, something like the Ujjwala scheme, where the connections were given in the name of women and the accounts for subsidies were opened in the name of women. But the household decision making on when to order a refill, who is to pay for the refill, is still kind of within the larger economic realm of the household, which is in most cases dominated by men. So creating solutions where men are also involved as part of the discussion. say like the LPG panchayats that are being done, targeting some of that messaging to the mother-in-laws and the spouses of the household will have a positive impact, because the economic decision making plays a role there. Similarly, there in the messaging, it's also important to be careful and not put the onus of livelihoods entirely on women. For example, a lot of these messaging campaigns do say that the time saved from cooking can be diverted to economic activities. And while that is true, we also see that that is something that is a fact, which is a factor of a lot of other local aspects. Like, are there opportunities available in the vicinity? Do women have other priority needs which they want to invest time in? So not to kind of, it's important not to push women towards something which might make them very hesitant about adopting these technologies. Something that happened with biogas, which put a lot of pressure and effort on women themselves within the household, which kind of becomes a disincentive. And the third thing would be making this a larger household need. And I think we have a lot of lessons from the health sector or the education sector, where whether it's maternal and child health, or the institutional births under maternal and child health programs, or vaccinations, they have been put forth as a family good. And that has kind of moved the conversation over and beyond. So, in fact, our research does show that there have been cases where convenience of cooking has now made men feel comfortable about stepping into the kitchen and taking over these things. So, looking at this not as a burden, but as a household good and a responsibility that everybody needs to share in, I think is definitely going to be a positive way to phrase the messaging going forward.
Thank you very much. And I think with that segue, we would love to move to Manish, who has a lot of hands-on experience in implementation. So Manish, who represents TERI, has over 10 years experience on promotion of renewable energy for sustainable development. And his flagship program on LABL, and also bundling of this lighting with clean cooking, and your experience, how you started this program almost a decade ago. So what roles can women play to ensure the market viabilities of these cooking experiences, like we talked about it in the earlier panel? How do we include the women in the supply chain, in the refilling, in the servicing of this entire process, where accessibility and ease becomes more viable? And what role have men played in this, in the BCC communication? And like Sasmita has already touched upon, not be exclusive, but be inclusive towards men as well. So share with us a little bit more about the Jivika program and your learnings. Happy to learn from you.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Sarin. Thank you, Sambodhi. Thank you, Tata Trust, for inviting me. And it's an honor for me to speak and share my experience. I will just start with the implementation that TERI has done with Jivika program, and how we have actually moved forward. And then these two questions will be answered. So when we started the renewable energy or clean energy program with Jivika, the initial few, I think I would say that the 1 or 2 years was just the introduction of the concept, like what they need, what is their requirement, what kind of cooking habits they have, what kind of fuel availability is there. So we invested a lot of time in understanding their needs, and based on that, designing the technology for the women. And that's how we came up with different four to five kind of stoves which actually suited the different kinds of fuel uh, and also the cooking habit. Second stage that we did is like engagement through co-ownership. So engagement through co-ownership means like engaging the women in investing in buying the product, and then training them, or making them aware about the importance of the clean cooking, and then using them, like helping them to continuously use that. So these were the second stage where we got the engagement of the women as a owner of this program. So this is how we moved. So on the third stage, we developed an ecosystems, like we developed created the distributor, or we created the renewable energy shops. We created we connected them with the distributor, with the manufacturers, quality suppliers. So this is the ecosystem approach where a lot of women were also trained on how they can service their the equipments, but on a nominal cost to the users. So this was the third stage where we involved women in servicing. Now we are in the fourth stage where we are engaging the women to have their own shops where they can keep this kind of product, and they can sell it and earn it. So in this fourth stage, we are trying to transfer the complete ownership. So women will be empowered to discuss with the manufacturer, take the product from the manufacturer, and directly sell it to their community, in their community. uh, we have kept the institutional strength of Jivika at the core, because they have a lot of SHG women, and they have their reach till the village level. So these cadres or these institutions has actually helped us in bringing the women at the fore, in transforming the energy access program, in bringing the energy access program at the village level. So the role of women has been at a different level. Now we are also thinking that if the women initiative or the women consortium can start making the cook stoves uh, at the local level itself, where they can bring in some equity, and they can bring in some their own resources, and we can support them technically, and so that they can manufacture the cook stove itself at the local level, and then they can sell it. So this is how we have actually moved forward in that. Coming to the role of men, in my opinion, the role of men in the behavior change, in the beginning it wasn't there, but when they started investing, some of the women, when they started purchasing it, this has happened only with the consent of their husband or their brother or their house, whoever is in the house. So the woman has always have been interacting with the men in taking any decision of purchase, or with any decision in starting a business. Let's say now we all these women are investing about 50,000, 1 lakh rupees in buying these cook stoves or solar products, and then doing this business. So all these women have taken men into confidence, and then they have started. Yeah, but definitely when it comes to transfer switching over to the clean cooking, we have always focused more on the women side, because it is their problem, and that's why we think that if we educate the women, then they will understand and they will start using it. And some of these women have also been we have they have become a local resource person for bringing the behavior change among the other community members. So the role of men is also important, and we have always worked with the women only, but they have been always interacting with the men and taking their consent before doing any kind of activity.
Thank you very much, Manish. And with that, I would like to move to Arijit. Arijit has over 25 years experience building global brands through South Asia and Africa. Arijit has worked with a global alliance for clean cooking as a regional director, and he's also supported execution of these annual operating plans in the region and closely worked with UN Foundation. So, Arijit, where we want to learn from your experience is how has technology been leveraged, and we've seen that in the study that was done by Sambodhi as well, that the right elements, the right data elements utilized for the right purpose and the insights are extremely useful. For example, when we are building awareness and we focus on efficiency and reduction of emission, whereas what they value is more safety and taste, then it may not really impact the adoption as fast. So, what I want to know and learn from you for all of us is, could you share a few of the success stories about women leading this behavioral change in the clean cooking space and how they leverage technology? How can we leverage data for rapid innovation and also service design? And a little bit more of experience where sensors, metering, AI has been used beyond efficiency, um, even in the design. So over to
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sarin. And it's a pleasure and honor to be with this panel. And I would like to start off with the women leading in various BCC transformations in the clean cooking space. And as we know, I'll give a small introduction that affordable access to usable clean cooking technologies is essential for the poorest 3 billion people which we have today, who still rely on open fires for cooking. So, in this regard, there are many success stories of individual brilliance of women where women have led transformation in the clean cooking space. And I'd like to just specifically talk about three women who are very close to my heart. I've worked closely with them, so I know what they have done. And I start with, this organization called Jaipur Rugs Foundation, which is there in Rajasthan. And the alliance worked with the Jaipur Rugs Foundation a couple of years back, an organization which employs more than 40,000 women all over the country who earn their livelihood from weaving rugs. Here we identified a woman called Shanti Bai. She runs a weaving business, employs more than 28 employees, and she does stove stacking. But nowadays, she is mostly using the improved cook stoves and the LPG and trying to do away with the mud stove which she was using earlier. Her kitchen today is smoke free, and with her team of 28 employees and other people in the community, she is actually able to spread the importance and essence of clean cooking, which ultimately is going to be extremely helpful for her to have a better and healthy living. That's one. The second one, in terms of Azira Samira Bawunia, who is the second lady of Ghana and a dedicated global ambassador for clean cooking. She promotes the adoption of clean cooking and helps promote the adoption of clean solutions in her hometown country, Ghana. Mrs. Baunia was actually the architect of a MOU signing between the Indian Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and the National Petroleum Authority of Ghana to bring in the Indian LPG recirculation model in Ghana, where they do not have the kind of technology we have, where you can order for a cylinder refilling online and automatically that gets captured and the cylinder gets refilled by going into the house of that particular individual in Ghana. So that's the second one. The third one is an entrepreneur who's called Happy Amos, who broke through a male dominated clean cooking industry in Nigeria and founded her own cookstoves manufacturing company. As of today, Happy Amos has trained more than 400 women, including the refugees, on the negative impacts of cooking with animal dung, etc. Currently, under difficult COVID times, she and her team of 80 sales agents have started selling improved cook stoves via WhatsApp, which she today calls digital marketing, thereby without having to leave her house and maintain the social distancing. So these are the three lovely stories regarding the women who have been leading changes. Coming to your question number two, which is data, technology platforms, and innovation, I must share with you that today manufacturers all over the world, especially in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, they have a lot of difficulty in getting their stoves tested and certified before they are released in the market for sale. In this regard, organizations like the Clean Cooking Alliance have helped stakeholders to access the regional testing and knowledge centers to get their products tested through standardized test methods, ensuring stove and fuel innovation. For example, once you get as a manufacturer your product tested, you exactly know in which tier, TIER, in which tier your stove falls in. Is it a tier 2, is it a tier 3, or a tier 4? Because it will clearly give you the data related to the efficiency and the emission. And this is extremely important from the supply side of things. You may create a lot of demand, but if you are not able to give the right product to the consumer, we have seen in many countries where there has been a lot of disappointment at the end consumer level. Point number two, on the data side, the Alliance has this annual sales reporting voluntary results, which are shared by the oil marketing companies, stove manufacturers, and that is very important to know because you must have an annual operating plan. You must have a global plan. Today, 3 billion people translates into 600 million households. The alliance had at one point in time, which they achieved, had an initial target of 100 million households by 2020. And they achieved it because they got this data from the various organizations like the OMCs, the stove manufacturers, as I mentioned. This not only helps in getting the data, it also helps you in tracking small organizations, especially in the biomass side, if they're actually scaling up, whether they are in a position to get a grant, a catalytic small grant or an enterprise marketing fund, etc., so they can scale up further. That's point number two. Thirdly, on the technology side, and you already mentioned, and a lot of other speakers earlier mentioned, is the fixing the Bluetooth enabled sensors in the kitchen. We were personally involved along with Tata Trust, along with Sambodhi in Gujarat as well as Uttar Pradesh, where these Bluetooth enabled sensors were actually fixed up in one particular kitchen of several households. You put one sensor on a mud stove or an unclean stove, and you fix the other sensor on an LPG or an induction stove. And by real-time translation, the movement of that data onto your laptop or your server, you're actually able to see that if this woman who was using 80% of her time cooking on a mud stove, is she really transforming into LPG? Is she really transforming into a cleaner cook stove? Is she really transforming into a induction stove? Somewhere it happens, somewhere it doesn't happen. But definitely, this is a very, very important data, piece of technology which helps you.
Thank you so much, Arijit. And with that, I would like to come to my last speaker, who's from UNEP, Parimita, and has a ton of experience leading energy activities of Empower project in UNEP, with 17 years of experience in sustainable energy, women entrepreneurship, and climate change. Parimita has served as a regional coordinator at Climate Technology Center and Network. So, Parimita, we see that sometimes, coming back to this gender complexities and the communication, behavioral change communication strategies, that we may be communicating for faster adoption to the children, but children really are not the decision makers. The decision maker is somebody else. So, who are the target groups and entry where the needle could move faster and more effectively? What will make these solutions sustainable and scalable for faster adoption and usage? And I'm particularly focusing on usage, not on awareness, because that's where the needle would really move faster. So, based on your experience across countries, what have you found to be an effective business model?
Thank you, Dr. Sarin. Hi, everyone. This is, of course, my privilege to be here. And of course, with all my home countries colleagues, I'm really feeling privileged for this. So just to answer or respond to your first question, who should be the target group? Who should we target, basically? So now there are different labels of target groups. And when we try to target them, the communication needs to be customized based on the kind of target group that we are considering. So let's say a different label. When I say different label, the first would be the community itself. So when we are trying to communicate, of course, lots of panel members have already mentioned that it should be a more inclusive communication process. So we can't exclude the male participants from this whole communication strategies. So men has to be integrated into the communication process while promoting cookstove, maybe for women, but they should be an integral part of this. So while doing that, the entry point should be at the design stage itself. We cannot go with a communication strategy by ourselves and then try to impose that on the community. We have to develop, and it has to be a completely consultative process. And it has to be done at the design stage itself and trying to understand the background, the dynamics that exist not only at the household level, but at the community scale, and then design your communication strategies based on that. So it's the integration of man as well as designing it at the initial design stage. So now while doing that, what I got, I mean, from various experience, what we got from different countries is there are different, in the community, there are different community groups or community leaders who exist. And maybe in those cases, it's not necessarily that it's all male dominated or female dominated. So what we need to do is to bring those kind of community leaders and prepare the communication for them so that they can convince the community in a much better way. Because we can't develop the trust in one day. It cannot be built in one day. So the trust factor which has already been developed and with the community leaders should be also one of the target group and should be taken into considerations, and they should try to convince the community further. So that's at the community level. So it's a whole community plus the community leaders needs to be taken into consideration. The second level would be at the provincial, at the state level. Who are the actual implementer of the process? Be it the CSOs or NGOs or be it the health officials. I will not repeat what all the other panelists have already mentioned, but there are several other stakeholders who plays a very critical role in the cookstove domain. For example, if we bring the health officials into picture, and if they convey that how bad quality air create more health hazard, that creates a better level of confidence. That's what we experienced in Cambodia, in Vietnam, when we try to say that, oh, okay, so this is climate change, this is deforestation, this will bring health hazard. They would not understand those languages. So we have to speak in their language. And who can speak on that is someone from their community who is working on that specific issues. For example, health is the health officials, maybe deforestation, probably the forest officials. So that way we have to identify who could be those messenger or the change agent within the community who can convey the impact of bad quality or not, or the cooking services which can give kind of health hazard or other things. So that's then the difference or the second label of target groups that we should consider. And the third, we should have this enabling policy makers on the policy at the national or at the regional scales. When I say that, I'll very briefly touch upon one of the things what we have done with the Southeast Asian countries with ASEAN Center of Energy. So they have a kind of forum on energy expert groups, and every 4 years they come out with the energy outlook, which talks about the complete implementation and action plan on different themes of energy, where the focus should be and where the policy needs to be developed. So those policymakers also needs to be conveyed and aware of the impact so that they can come out with more enabling policies. So the entry point there would be to target those networks, target those associations, maybe the SARC, maybe the ASEAN working and expert groups, and present there what the impact of that and communicate them, and then they can come out with more customized policies. So those are probably some of the target groups that we can consider. And besides this, of course, the financier, the private investor plays very critical role. But because of time, probably I would not be able to go into detail of those stakeholders as well. But those are the kind of target group that we should consider. Besides the point what other panelists have already mentioned. Coming back to your second point on how the sustainable and the business models, what we probably have thought of or are working at this moment or experienced, I would probably take two examples what we are trying to do. And what I think even today Dr. Swarup had mentioned and lots of panelists have mentioned. So one is in certain cases, the institutional structure exists in certain ways, and certain investment has already gone into that, and the human resources and those things are in place. So can we consider the existing institutional structure and build upon the business model around that? We should try for that first, if that is feasible, if that is possible. So what we try to do in Vietnam is through our Women Entrepreneurship and Energy Access project, which also includes cookstove, is considering the Vietnam Women's Union, which has 13 million women members throughout Vietnam. So they already have this microcredit schemes. They already have this network in place. So what we try to do is communicate the impact, build the capacities on renewable energy and the clean cook stoves, and then see how those already existing infrastructure can be used further to disseminate. So that's the way the scaling up, what we are experiencing is the scaling up is happening more faster. Of course, there are challenges, but we have to address those challenges, accept and address those challenges. We should be flexible enough to change our business model depending upon the requirement and do that. The second example and the last, I'll probably take 2 more minutes, is can we also consider the financing institutions who already have the network in place and who already have a kind of credit lines in place to include cook stoves or any clean cooking systems or services, so that it would be much more sustainable and scalable. It's not that when our project is over, when the funding is over, it's dissipated. It's not like that. So what we try again, both in Cambodia and in Vietnam, and to that matter in Bangladesh, is to see existing financing infrastructure and helping the financing institution to come out with a kind of green financing schemes, or green catalog, which can promote financing schemes. So our role is more as an enabler, as a facilitator, and come out with the communication strategies, capacity buildings, and on the green catalog, so that they can choose which kind of product is more viable and those kind of things. But we are not focusing more on the funds per se, that in any case that's there. Our role is more as an integrator, as an enabler. And that's the way probably we can think of further. So bringing the financing institutions, grassroots level network, and use that infrastructure and institutional structure to replicate and scale up.
Thank you very much. And I think it's been very useful for us to listen to all your experiences. While, we have had Sasmita talk to us about policies, and especially where the LPG panchayats, an example that she shared, where an economic decision is not made by the woman or the man, and you bring in all the other actors and people who are impacted to make this decision and become more aware, and also by Manish on the co-ownership of solution, and especially now getting them involved in the manufacturing of it, because they are the ones who are going to then tweak the solution basis the taste and ease of use, etc. With Arijit's experience, the examples that he shared with us from all three experiences, and also to leverage technology. And then, of course, Parimita summarizing it with all the customized and inclusive communication, including stakeholders like community, influencers, building trust, getting the state level health officials, networks, financial institutions together. So thank you very much